Welcome to One Weighted Machines and the B7 Audi RS4 series. In this video, we will be covering seat removal and trunk carpet removal. The metal tab that you want to be mindful of when peeling back your carpet is located right here. Here it is from a different angle. There is a 12-volt attachment. We're going to pull the carpet back out and then we're going to work it out from the back side. And right here, just behind this tie down point here, is the plastic tab that you're going to use a trim tool puller to get out if you're removing the whole carpet. Here's what the piece looks like once it's out. I don't recommend you try to yank down on the carpet to remove this at the same time. As you've seen with the plastic stuff, they have a possibility of breaking if you don't pull them straight down with even force. I ended up using a flathead screwdriver to gently go around the plastic tab until it came out. It came out quite violently. It jumped across the trunk. The trim tool was a little bit too wide to get under there. It's a very thin-lipped plastic tab. Now we're going to pull the carpet out, being mindful of the 12-volt connector. So as I came to take it out, you're going to have to work it underneath, flex it down underneath this cargo points bracket in order to pull it out. I'm also going to go and release the rear seats and fold them down, as it seems the carpet curls around the back of the seat in order to get it out. But don't force it, just gently pry it down from here until you can get it around the top part of this. The side carpets on the car extend to underneath the rear seats, so you need to remove this plastic cover by pulling up, remove the bolt that holds the bracket down, and then move the seat backs up from here and slightly inwards on both sides in order to expose the bolt to be able to remove the side carpets. Removing that bracket took more force with the screwdriver than I thought. I thought I broke the tab for sure, but the tab is still intact. So just make sure you get under there, use both hands, use the least amount of force that you can, and pry it up from the top portion. Pry it up with the tip of the screwdriver right here. You want to pry it up from where I've put the flathead screwdriver, right underneath that lip where the screwdriver is resting on. That's where you want to put the force, and it's going to swing backwards. It doesn't come fully out. Then there's a T30 underneath, and you're going to remove that. Look at where the orange trim tool is. What happened when I slightly lifted the seat up, the metal bracket and the plastic bracket both fell under together, and they put quite a bit of pressure on the actual leather part of the seat. You don't want that metal rubbing on there. So have something ready. Luckily I had the cargo net there. The design of the carpet goes around a bracket that holds in the holder for the rear seat back. If you look where the orange trim tool is pointing right now, you're going to go in from the passenger rear door and then the driver rear door. So there's the trim tool where we just left it off. Here is the 13mm bolt that you're going to remove. You want to just use a normal wrench. The wrench side is going to be easier to get it out. Alright, so the bolt is now out. It's right over there. The thing was, when the bolt was coming out, the head it became too tight of a fit. What you're going to have to do is push the actual seat back with one hand while you get the final couple threads out. You're going to have to wiggle it around a bit and you will get it out. So this right here is what I'm talking about. The actual carpet, this is an extension of the one in the trunk. It goes around the seat back. Where the orange trim tool puller is, go straight forward about a foot there. On the same bracket that we removed the 13mm, there's one more slightly lower than that. At this point, I've put the maximum angles that you can put that chair on, even using the headrest as a support, to keep it in the highest access position to that lower 13mm bolt. And the turns are not good, so we're actually going to remove the seat bottoms, being mindful of the heated seat connectors, in order to see if we have better access to those 13mm bolts. At this stage, I'm not going to fully reinstall the seat backs, but for those of you who are doing the job, you're going to do it in the correct order. You're going to remove the seat bottom rest first, remove the electrical plugs, and then you're going to remove the seat backs. So just to go with the flow of this current project right now, I'm just going to set the seat backs back in their position. I'm going to leave the one bolt I've removed out, and then we're going to go in there and remove the seat bottom. Now I've gone back and removed the plastic netting that I had in between the seats to protect them. Before I go on any further, as I came to put the seat backs back, the plastic piece was underneath here, and the metal bracket is right underneath there in the leather. That could have come off in any orientation and damaged the leather. So do be very careful about that plastic piece when you do take it out, whether it's before or after, whatever order. This has always been here in my leather, so that's not a concern. That didn't do anything, but I want to show you where it ended up for me so that you can know how much you have to pay attention for that not to damage your leather. I went ahead and removed the plastic piece and also that metal tab you were looking at. The part to the left is what you were looking at in the previous shot. I just curled it up slightly and turned it to the side. It didn't have many sharp edges, and I was able to take it completely out. I would say take it completely out in order not to have any chance of damage, and then put it back in the same fashion when you go to reinstall everything. Alright, so for the seat bottoms, where I'm pointing here, there are metal tabs that go into plastic clips. So the same spot on the other side of the car, you're going to have it. Unclip them on one side first, go around to the other side of the car and unclip them. You want to hold your hand in this orientation on the front under the seat so that you have even force when you're pulling it out. Alright, so as you saw in my car, the one side on the driver's side was pretty tough. I had to yank on it harder. The other side was pretty much loose. There's a bunch of surprises under here, which you'll probably find in your car too, if it's secondhand. Now let's look at the heated seat connectors. So I moved it forward just about 6 inches and it's fine. There's enough slack in the wires for the heated seats. So there you have the connectors for the heated seats. Like I thought, there's a pretty decent amount of slack in the lines. I really can't get a camera in there when I go to take them out. They aren't too traditional Audi looking electrical connectors, but I'm pretty sure with the screwdriver and using your common sense, if you've worked on German cars, which you should have if you're doing any of the jobs in these tutorials, you will be able to get it out. This is kind of like the home link connectors in the front bumper video that we did. You're going to have to be very careful, use your screwdriver, pinching with your thumb, whatever you need to, but make sure you maintain contact with the actual plug and you don't yank on the wires and pull them straight out of the connector. So you have to get in there, screwdriver, hand, whatever, be gentle, and remove them both from both sides of the heated seats. I've removed the bench seat and the electrical connectors. I took the bench seat inside the house. Don't store that inside the garage. There's too many things that could possibly damage it. Bring it back when you're done. The electrical connectors are actually much more intuitive than most of the Audi connectors. So the connector we're looking at is that thing right above that blue container looking thing in the garbage pile there. So as you can see, when you come under here, what you're going to do is with the top left corner of your head, you're going to slide it underneath the foam backing of the seat bottom to hold it up, and then you're going to have your phone to give you light, and you're going to reach in here and you're going to squeeze on these two tabs here. Okay, these two tabs at the back, and then you're going to release out. On the other side, you have this same connector and you have another one. We'll go take a look at those now. So here on the passenger side, you have the one on the left, which is identical to the one on that side.
And then this is most likely some kind of a control power. The one on the right, so there's two connectors. It unclips the same way. Just up to the right here, you'll see this plastic piece. This actually went inside of this hole here, which is where the seat bottom would have clipped into. That tab also, for whatever reason, has broken and most likely has fallen into the floor there. The one on the other side is intact. We'll go take a look at that one in a minute. But stuff like this, whoever was in here before, maybe they did a fuel pump or something. The importance of pulling straight up on all of these things. These little plastic tabs will break, they'll fall in, and you might not be able to find them. So I have to make do with my driver's side one holding in the rear bench seat. Over here on the driver's side, you can see what that's supposed to look like. So that outer plastic casing actually has more parts to it inside that the actual metal bracket on the seat bottom clips into.
Now we've got access to get that 13mm bolt on the bracket holding the seat back in much more easily.
Okay, so we're at the back seat here. I'm gonna go down and zoom in to show some of you who may be starting with the seat bottom. What you don't want to do is remove this shiny silver bolt here. That's for the seat belt. So maybe fold down the seat before you even start this and loosen the 113mm that's easy to see, just so you have access in your brain to which bracket it is that you need to remove two bolts for. Because when you do that, you're going to remove the bolts and you're going to see that they're black in color, and you'll know what you're looking for when you go under here to remove the second bolt. So now off camera, I'm going to remove that 13mm black colored bolt down there because there's really no access to get you guys a shot. So remember, you're removing two 13mm bolts from each bracket, and that bracket is a part of the seat back. So the one in the middle comes off of the sliding tab in the middle, and the one that is part of the seat, okay, it comes out with its metal bracket, and you put your two bolts in your paint spray can container. All the bolts in this job are the different sizes, so if you remember them, you won't mix them up. What I did on the passenger side here, I sat on the door sill, and now with the rear bench seat removed, there was just enough amount that I could move this seat back forward, and that allowed me to go in from underneath. So when I say underneath, I mean I got my hand in like this, my right hand. I went in with my right hand and I was able to grab that screw and thread it off from there while moving this around a bit to get the best position. So I've left it in there. What you can see it, the screw is right here. That's the second one. As you can see, the actual carpet goes fully around that bracket. So if you don't tear it off and you want to keep it like this, you do actually need to go through all these steps to remove that side carpet fully. When I go to do the driver's side seat, that one's probably going to come the whole way out. This passenger side, you're not going to fully remove it. There are actually wires going into the seat back, which most likely have something to do. See, they're right here. They probably have something to do with the belt tensioner for the center occupant. And over here, you have the actual seat belt buckle mechanism, which has some bolts down there. The point of saying these things is don't try to jerk this passenger side seat back out of your car. Now we can remove the rear carpet on the passenger side. There is an electrical plug underneath for the 12-volt connector that needs to be removed at this point. The electrical connector is going to be under here. So you want to push this forward slightly, get in there with the screwdriver or your thumb, and disconnect the wire. Again, this wire is going to be hanging loose. You don't want to put too much pressure on the wire sections to disconnect the wire from the actual connector tabs. The 12-volt connector has now been removed. Okay, so in order to get this out, this actually stays onto the assembly, onto the carpeted assembly here. What you have to do from the bottom is squeeze on this plastic tab, locate it, and then it slides right out. You don't need a screwdriver or anything. While I was figuring this out, I undid this plastic nut that was on the bottom part of the carpet with an adjustable wrench. And what that did, after I unplugged this, I was able to pull the actual 12 volt out freely from the top of the carpet. So in the case that this is not working in your car, undo the plastic nut and take it out like this. So that can be a bonus for you, but you don't need to do that in order to just remove the carpet. Remove carpeting from trunk. Alright, so we're back here on the driver's side. For some reason, I'm taking a different approach this time. I put a interlocking foam mat just in front of the rear wheel so I could kneel down. And then what I'm doing to get that bottom bolt on the bracket out, I'm using my thumb on my right hand to push back the seat, and I'm using my left hand with the wrench to thread out the 13mm on the bottom. After that, I'm going to fold the seat down and I'm going to take out the top one. These bolts need more threads removed with the actual wrench than you think, so get in there by hand once you've undone most of it. Here is the driver's side rear seat back, upside down on a foam mat. The metal bracket you see there is the one that you remove the two 13mm bolts from, and that wire up there, that wire comes out with the seat. If that's part of the heated seat system or something else, I'm not sure, but you need to be careful when you take that out. There were also other wires in the way when I was taking it out. You have to be careful to maneuver around those, although those could have been for the aftermarket rear video camera that a previous owner had installed. Take the seat back and put it inside of the house to prevent damage to the leather. So here are the 13mm bolts from the actual seat back brackets. As you can see, they're all the same height, so you can store them together. They each have a metal washer that needs to go back. On the passenger side, the seat back that we didn't fully remove from the car due to its electrical wires and center seat belt, I left the bottom 13mm bolt in. It was already tight enough clearance to get it fully out to dislodge the seat, but to take it the whole way out and then put it back is just extra work I didn't want to do, and it seems like that would be the most difficult of all of them for some reason of the design to get out. You might have luck taking it fully out. I ended up leaving that one in. So it's 4 bolts in total. When I say the bolt on the passenger side bottom seat back was not fully taken out, it is fully threaded out and the seat is completely moved forward. I just did not take it out of the bracket and squeeze it against the actual seat material more to take it out. The more traditional way of removing these seat backs is to not remove the metal bracket that I did, this one here. What you would do is just lift up on the seat and push out towards the other side to get it loose. I tried this a few times and it didn't work out too well for me, which is why I resorted to removing the 13mm. You may do it and it'll work just fine for you. If you go the 13mm route, you just need to make sure that when you go back to hand thread them in, you don't cross thread those 13mm bolts, as it's a bit tough to get to them. Another reason that I decided to do this is because of these two wires here. The wire to the right there, both of these go into the seat back. The one on the right would actually come out with the seat back. The second wire at the back there is actually going up into the side bolster, and there's no connector for it. It's most likely underneath here, and I did not want to put too much pressure on this, and I'm going to zoom in now and show you that maybe somebody has put too much pressure or some kind of odd force on it, as there is fraying on part of the wire. This seems like it's most likely for the middle occupant seatbelt pretensioner possibly, but let's take a look at the wire fraying. So these are those same two wires from a different angle. As you can see, the blue wire has some of its casing removed. What caused this, I'm not sure, but this does seem like a stock wire that is part of the car. It goes into the seat back. It's not something aftermarket somebody would have installed. And reaching up underneath the side bolster, I can see that there is some kind of a foam around this. This is one other reason why I chose to go with removing the brackets instead of trying to tug the seats up and out. But it's your choice, it's your car. In order to remove the carpet fully, remove the cargo tie-down point towards the driver rear seat as well. The one beside the screwdriver there. Just like the other side, you'll need to remove the plastic retaining tab using a flathead screwdriver to release the entire carpet. Remove the carpet.
It's important to follow all of these steps and to not try to remove the trunk carpet without removing the seat. As you can see in the bottom left-hand corner there, it is a complete piece that goes around the seat metal bracket. If you try to remove the carpet from the back without removing the seat, you're going to risk tearing this area, and it's actually quite strong, so you're probably just going to tug on it and damage some weaker part of the carpet. This is the seat behind the driver's seat. We're going to zoom in on the bottom right hand corner here, and I'm going to show you the metal bracket. This here is the metal bracket that is bolted into the car. Those two 13mm bolts go in from the back and they come into the actual car from here. So the traditional way, as I mentioned before, is you wiggle the seat up and out of this bracket. But that's your choice on your car if you want to take that risk. As you can see, once this comes out, this metal piece here, okay, it's sitting inside of a very flimsy plastic bracket that swivels a little bit. If you were to unknowingly crack this in the process, you may have one of those creaks that drives you crazy when you drive down the road. So for me, I tried it a couple times. It wasn't worth it to get any kind of a crack inside of this piece of plastic, although it does have some movement. So the weight of the seat and the force that you put on it with the quality of this plastic and the cars being old is not something I recommend you doing, but it's your choice. So either remove this or you can do it that way. Alright, so we're back here on the passenger side rear seat back. We're going to go back down here. Earlier I discussed leaving that 13mm bolt in. Once you swivel the metal bracket a bit and you've got this loose, it'll come out easily, so change that. Next, we're going to remove this piece on the side over here in the hopes that there is an electrical connector for the one wire going into the seat back. At the top here, if you have a wrench that can go past the H5 bit, use that. It'll be a better place to grab it. If not, like me, use an H5 to loosen the bolt at the top, and then there's an 8mm at the bottom. So we'll zoom into both of those and you can see them. In order to avoid damage to any of the leather surface up there, you want to guide it out from underneath this plastic bracket here when you come to remove it. Now that we've got it loosened, don't take it out right away. The actual bracket with the 8mm, that right there is the bracket with the 8mm that we took out. If you look in the mid left hand side of the screen there, you'll see a white pull tab. You want to use needle nose pliers or just your thumbs to gently work that one out before you remove it, as there's a wiring bundle attached to it. The next one, now that we curl around here, so now here we are at the same piece going down in from the inside. I've brought it forward just a bit, and down there you see this little green tab. You also need to squeeze that with needle nose pliers and push it forward, as there's another wire attached to that. So make sure you detach these first and then take this side rest piece out from the passenger rear side. The camera was in my way, so I did this off camera, but the green one, which you can see right there, it's just a little bit of a grab with the needle nose pliers, and then you can just about push it inwards
The white tab, I actually grabbed it from the inside and I pulled it outwards. So both of them were done from the back side of the seat back. I had to reach through. The pliers barely got through for the white connector. But you do have quite a bit of room of play with this side piece while you're getting those connectors out. Just be careful not to tug on them too hard to damage the plastics. Alright, so the side piece, take inside the house and store with everything else so it doesn't get damaged in the garage. The little 8mm you can store with your other bolts in the paint cap can. If you think you're going to start mixing them up, remember that you have the video to refer back to. So the 8mm I used on that was just a standard 3/8 ratchet with a reducer to a 1/4 inch and an 8mm, and it worked. Then this piece that came out of the top with the H5, you're going to want to store all of this together, as this bolt has a washer. This piece kind of floats freely on there, and then you have that, and you want the orientation of this so that you remember it. I'm not sure of the adjustment on this one, but when you put it back in, this should be something that you can easily adjust on your own. It looks like it's about 5 or 6 threads out from the factory setting, so try to store all this together. The procedure for the other seat side piece is exactly the same. Okay, so on the driver's rear side, the H5 was stripped to begin with, and of course I thought that maybe I can get it, so I tried it one more time and I also stripped it a little bit more. So one side loose, one side extremely tight. Beware of this. What I'm going to do now is use this small pair of vice grips. I'll put them on the table after so you can get an idea of the size. If you do have an attachment that can go all the way over the bolt and grab that nut, that's great, but this is most likely going to work. I just wanted to show you guys so you know which orientation to grab it on. So the shaft is at the back there, and the actual vice grip is at the front. And I'm just going to grab it and do a turning motion. Okay, so let's go over with what's happening here. I also tried at one point to grab this shaft with the vice grips. I don't recommend you do that. I just got a little bit of a scratch on it, and again, if you go too deep with that, you could cause an annoying clicking with your seat when you reinstall it. The vice grips did not work grabbing inside of there. The vice grips, the little ones, grabbing them in there and trying to turn it, also did not work. It's very tight. What is most likely going to work is a 1/2 inch drive deep socket. Okay, if you have it, I have a 19mm. I don't have an 18mm, and I put one of my wrenches just nearby there to see, and it's most likely an 18. But the reason you want a 1/2 inch drive is because it needs to be wide enough inside in order to clear this top part. I have another set of deep sockets and I have an 18 on it, and the insides of the socket are too short to clear this top bit. So be mindful of that in case you do have a tight one. Alright, so as you saw there, the vice grips ended up working. The tactic that I changed to, if you have an 18mm deep socket, use that. It's the safer route. But with the vice grips, okay, the rounded edge, this is a standard size vice grip, I grabbed the outside portion here. Okay, very important, not the shaft, the outside portion. The seat clips onto the shaft. So if you were to scratch this up, you could create play in there. But this piece is not very important. So I put the rounded edge of the vice grips on this, and I was able to grab it and give it enough force to turn it off. So this is something that you can do if you don't have the 18mm deep socket 1/2 inch drive.
There was also this tag on the inside of the side seat suggesting it's interchangeable between models.
For the carpet and seat removal video, this is the final storage container. You're going to have less bolts in here because you won't be removing the bumper. Now we're back here on the passenger rear side, and we're going to remove this electrical plug. This electrical plug is underneath that small piece of foam that you see there in the center of the screen. You slide that off. First, we're going to go and disconnect the negative terminal on the battery, as this is most likely an airbag connection, SRS system connection. This is most likely for the middle seat occupant belt tensioner. So you always want to disconnect the battery when working with airbag components. The other thing that this might do is set off an airbag light. It most likely will if you intend on driving the car without the rear seats in place. So beware of this. Even if you do plug it back in, there is a chance you will have to code this back, and you'll need a proper scan tool to do that. So if most of you are just doing the detailing part, just get it to this point that it is here. Clean up around the edges of the seats. You'll be able to get the pet rock on the back and clean up any hairs easily, and then just put it back. Don't bother tampering with your SRS system. For those of you removing it maybe for weight reduction on a track, then you are going to remove it and you will get an airbag light, most likely. Disconnect negative terminal on battery. Removing the rear seats in this car is solely for off-road use. If you were to remove the seats completely from this car and drive it on the road and get in an accident, you're at a risk of severe injury or death because your SRS system may fail to activate in an accident. So if you drive this car on the road, put the seats back in. You must also take it to a licensed Audi shop to have them make sure to check the SRS system is functioning and reprogram it if necessary. Even in the case that you're doing this off-road or on track, you are at risk of severe injury or death without a functioning SRS and airbag system. Here we are at the airbag connector, the seatbelt pretensioner connector. The removal of this connector is a bit counterintuitive. You're going to think that different parts are clips that you can remove. All you have to do is press firmly on both sides, minding not to tear out the wires on either end, and pull out on it, and then it will come out. Before we go to remove the last bolt for the seat belt, to remove the seat back, I want you to be very careful here because this seat back is a two-part one. This is the heavier one, and the bottom part is curved. It has a very high tendency to slide, and the leather on this car damages easily. So once you have those wires loose and you come to move it around just a little bit in order to get access to that one last bolt, be careful because this thing's going to try to slide out on you. So really grab it with two hands and make sure it's stable before you go into the next step. So if you look into the V from the seat back and the weather stripping, you'll see one bolt there. It's underneath those two seat belts with their red parts showing. We're going to zoom in there and we're going to remove that bolt. I'm going to do this part off camera, but if you look at my ratchet, I'm using a 1/2-inch ratchet with a reducer and a deep socket 18mm to get it off. If you want to use swivels, you can, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to move the seat back forward a bit more so that I can get the straight shaft and a 1/2-inch ratchet on that bolt to get it off. This is why you need two hands in this spot so that you can avoid the seat sliding around and getting cut on something. Once you have that 18mm bolt loose and you've removed the seat from the car, have a space ready before you do this, as once you have both hands on that seat and you bring it out, you're going to have to maneuver very carefully not to tear the leather and set it down properly somewhere. So that 18mm bolt in the seat buckle down there in the bottom middle of the screen, just leave it in with the seat buckle so that you don't lose it. It's not really going to go anywhere. When it comes to storing the seat, you can see that I've put it upside down and I've extended the
passenger rear headrest so that the actual weight of the seat comes down on the leather on the two headrests. You want to do this because if you look in the bottom right corner of the seat back right now, the way it is on your screen upside down, there's a small red safety tab there. You're at risk of breaking that red safety tab if you don't have the seat headrest extended. You don't also want to put it the other way around because you have your electrical connectors there, which you don't want to crush, and the bottom of the seat back, which is the top on your screen right now, is much more curved and slippery than the bottom, so you are at a risk of it sliding out on you. Storing it like this is a safe bet, but take it inside the house as soon as you get a chance because the leather on these cars is soft and it will tear easily in a garage environment. Reinstallation is going to be the reverse of removal. The only places that I urge you to have a lot of control and focus over, don't do this reinstall when you're tired. That 18mm bolt for the seat belt, it's going to be tough to get in there and thread that back in by hand. As well, if you've done it with my method and taken the metal brackets off of the sides as opposed to bringing the seat off, risking damage to that plastic tab inside the seat, you're also going to have to take great care when rethreading those 13mm bolts so that you don't cross thread. When you do come to put those 13mm bolts in, remember that they go in from the back, and use the bit of room that you have play for motion here in order to help you get those screws aligned. And you're going to have to go from the back of the trunk for one of them in order to hand tighten it, and for the other, before you put in the bottom seat cushion, you'll have to get in there from underneath and hand thread the other one. This is not going to be too bad because the other side has a fixed tab on the seat that'll give you some guidance when you're doing it. But either do this when you have a lot of focus or get somebody to help you to make sure that you can only focus on not cross-threading those 13mm bolts when you go to put them back. Cleaning these side carpets and rear seats is all possible when they're inside of the car. You're going to have good detailing experience and a strong back though to get inside there with the different tools required and really be able to clean them up at the level that you can when they're outside of the car. Now that these are out because we did the seat removal video, stay tuned for the detailing series where we'll have these in plain sight and we can go over techniques that you can use to detail your vehicle better. On a final note, you want to make sure to remove the negative battery wire from the battery and that it is not in contact with any metal surface on the car when you've done this. You also want to plug back in the SRS connector into the seat back before you reconnect the battery negative cable to the car when you're reinstalling.